To have you all here. 5 o'clock on the knocker. I'm impressed with you all. Doing so well. It's great. Here we are again for another session as we continue on with our Festival of the Enneagram. My name's Kate McCandless, and I'm your host for this evening. So I'll be writing back to you in the chat when you ask questions or you have any comments, thoughts, or feelings about what's going on as Yuliya teaches tonight. It's so wonderful to have you all here. And, I know we keep talking about it. We're excited to have people come together because that's why we built this organization. That's why Yulia and I both, and Andre, and Val also, he's in this session tonight, is also on the board. We're here serving you guys because we're passionate about the Enneagram. We want more of this. We want more community. We want more opportunity for people to share and teach and grow and learn. We also want to bring speakers that we're still getting to know, or people that you already know. So it doesn't matter where you are in the world. Of course, we're going to be setting down under time slots, which is why you're probably all here, because we want more opportunity, more access to people who are sharing and teaching about the Enneagram. I also really want to acknowledge our first peoples as we gather online from many places across, not just Aotearoa, New Zealand and Australia, but also Oceania and of course across the world. We want to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands and the waters from where we join, wherever they are. But we do honour our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people as first peoples of Australia. I also want to acknowledge the Māori, the Tanga Whenua, and of Aotearoa and New Zealand. So we pay our respects to elders past and present and honour the enduring wisdom, cultures, and relationships to land that continue to shape in these places. And it's a true privilege to be able to do that. So before we launch into a wonderful training, I'd like to just open with a little intro to Yuliya. I know some of you were here last night and would have heard a bit of an overview about Yuliya Schamrel, who's an Enneagram certified coach and practitioner who works with people and companies in Aotearoa, New Zealand and Australia, and also in the US, but there has been other countries in the past. So she's a global teacher. She's a senior faculty member with the IEQ9, and she delivers their level 1 certification programs worldwide. And can I say, there is one coming in Melbourne in October. So if you're interested in completing that certification, we're going to post up a link. Yuliya may be promptly doing that right now. So if you want to come, I'm going to try and get there and complete my training again with Yuliya. And I'd love to invite you all to consider that as part of your training if you're interested as well. So Yuliya has a background in organizational development and team dynamics. Her work with individuals and teams is built on trust, empathy, and joy. What a combination. She's a powerhouse, building resilient team and really looking to navigate change and deepen self-awareness through the Enneagram. So she brings a grounded, practical approach and a strong commitment to psychological safety, diversity, and acceptance. Something that I've learned about Yuliya since we've been working together is she's a bit of an adventurer and likes taking her kids hiking, but she's a speed machine. So typical type 8 likes working fast and furious. Something that we love about type 8's passionate and quick to get everything done. So hold on to your hats because you're going to need to. Strap your seatbelts in as you learn about type 8 from our wonderful Yuliya Schamrel. Over to you, Yuliya.
Oh, thank you, Kate. Every time I hear your introduction, I'm like, wow, this is a cool person. And then I remember, oh, that's me. So welcome all, and so great to see you. Some familiar faces, some very familiar faces. I've got shout out, my niece is joining us from Ireland. She's known me for her entire life. And I know, look at her all getting shy. But that's just what aides do, right? We just have a thought, we blurt it out without thinking about consequences sometimes. And we are going to learn that together. So we are going to have a conversation about type 8. And I would love your questions. You can raise your hand, you can type something in the chat, because I think in conversation, we really get to know each other better and to understand how different Enneagram types show up. I'm going to repeat myself if you were here yesterday, like many of you were. But what I really would invite us to remember is that as much as the Enneagram is a beautiful lens through which we can see a human being, we are always much more than our type. We have a type and we're not our type. And so today, as we're going to be describing how our type 8 can think, feel, and act and appear, and we will talk about transformational strategies for type 8, we always need to hold the idea that any individual would experience life differently and that there will be similarities if we share the same type, and yet we will also have very, very different experiences. So with that in mind, let's embark on Enneagram Type 8. It's also quite interesting if we're delivering a teaching course in the Enneagram with a co-facilitator, we kind of try not to do our own type because, maybe something slips through. So if something is slipping through from an 8 perspective, I invite you to tell me, to let me know gently. Although, Kate, given your Enneagram type, we might be falling into the same blind spot here. So please do stop, ask questions, and let's take that action because type 8 finds itself in the action center of the Enneagram, sometimes referred to as body center or a gut center. So if we look at the structure of the Enneagram and the sacred geometry of the Enneagram, the outer circle refers to the Enneagram as a whole, and we are returning to whole selves through working with the Enneagram. And then one of the first structures that we see on the wheel are the 3 centers. So we can think about them as centers of intelligence. In the Enneagram language, we refer to them as centers of structure. And so we have the feeling center, types 2, 3, and 4, who are looking for love and acceptance. We have the thinking center, types 5, 6, and 7, who are looking for safety and security, and they create it in very different ways. And then we're looking at action center types 8, 9, and 1, who are really concerned and paying attention about whether or not their boundaries, psychological and physical, are being respected. And whether somebody is controlling them, or perhaps maybe they are controlling somebody else. And so types 8, 9, and 1 have this kind of energy of looking out for that, but they do it in a very, very, very different way. And so we have all 9 presentations for you this week. So we're going to focus on specifically type 8, but it really is fascinating how the same center concern shows up so differently for types 8, 9, and 1. And actually, Val is here who shared type 9 with us on Sunday. So if you attended his session, it will be interesting if you could see where and how type 8 sometimes have a similar concern to type 9, but how so differently they approach of getting there. Right. So we're going to start by looking at some descriptions of a type 8, and then we're going to go in some more detail with that. And again, so these descriptors will apply to most, might not apply to some, so we're going to take them lightly. But ultimately, when we are thinking about somebody who's Enneagram type 8, usually they have that quite big energy. So sometimes they appear to be larger than they are. And it's quite interesting to observe very often 8 kind of take more space than needed. Like if they're sharing a desk with someone, you will see their stuff kind of creeping into the other person's one, because that's our way of making sure that nobody will violate my boundaries, because I'm so actively violating theirs, it wouldn't even cross their mind to do that. And again, it's not a conscious decision. It's just like, I am here, I have arrived. And so when we think about type 8, often they're seen as somebody who is decisive, self-assured, assertive. Interestingly, sometimes that assertiveness is in a blind spot. Quite often you'll hear an 8 saying, I'm just being open and honest. And that honesty sometimes doesn't land quite so. And very often there's an energy of I'd rather make a wrong decision than no decision at all. And so you can see how in some scenarios this can be a good strategist, and in other scenarios it gets our aides in a lot of trouble. And so all of these characteristics are not good or bad. Right, so they can be fantastic in some situations and they can be detrimental in others. And so our work with the Enneagram is in seeing them for what they are. These are our strategies. They're not who we are. And so we can make a choice. But the narrative is often I must be strong and I must be in control. And I must be not only strong for myself, but also for others. Right, so it is my job to protect people who are near and dear to me, even if they did not ask to be protected. So, can you hear how there's some notes from a kind of two thinking coming through, right? I'm going to help you whether you ask me for help or not. With an A, there is a kind of narrative of if I think you need my protection, I'm going to protect you, no matter what. And also, quite a big language marker for an aid is the word fair, right? And it usually goes as an this is not fair. And what's important to remember here is that often it's fairness in a subjective way of what myself as type A see as fair or not fair. And that's where the difference is with type 1, where they see what's right, whether I want this or not. For an 8, often that fairness is about what I find as fair or not. And so the key motivation is being strong, as we said, and in control. But the other side of that is for me to do that, I need not be vulnerable. And so we all have vulnerabilities, and not noticing our vulnerabilities actually makes us vulnerable. Right. So that takes us to the other kind of Enneagram idea is that very often what we want the most, we get the least because we're trying so hard to get that. And it's a paradox that all types experience around the item that is so important to them. And so specifically for an 8, because I'm going to deny my vulnerability, I'm actually creating vulnerability for myself, because by sharing things with others, this is how I can get stronger. The blind spots are weakness again and vulnerability, but also the threshold for an 8 of vulnerability is pretty high, right? Quite often, 8s get quite serious health issues because they could ignore high blood pressure for years. They could ignore pain, even chronic pain. And so sometimes that weakness and vulnerability is not in my head. It's actually pretty real. It's often very physical, and yet they can have tendency to ignore it. So if you do have aids in your lives, please encourage them to take care of themselves and remind them that while they might look like they have all the energy in the world, they still are humans and they have the same amount of energy and they need the same amount of sleep, and they also need to go and see their doctor for that annual checkup. And that actually is defense mechanism in action. So what our ego does, and it's just so sneaky and it's so clever like that. Wherever I see something about myself that I don't like, my defense mechanism comes in. So I employ my defense mechanism so it can swiftly move that very thing I don't want to see about myself into my blind spot. I cannot see it. I cannot see it. I do not have to address it. And again, this is the mechanism that works for every type. I don't like something strongly. Defense mechanism engages. That thing I don't like goes into my blind spot. And so defense mechanism for a type 8 is denial. And denial works in many different ways. They could deny the impact. So very often that 8's expressed anger is a way for them to build rapport, really. Like if we are angry at each other, that's so good. Now we all know where we stand. And sometimes they deny that it actually is quite difficult for another person. For somebody who would like to avoid conflict, having that interaction can be really difficult. So that could be denial. Denying my physical pain can be denial. Denying the need to be taken care of, that also can be denial. And it's really effective. It's so effective, in fact, that sometimes aides genuinely forget events that cause them the feeling of vulnerability and weakness. They just genuinely don't remember that. And so our defense mechanisms can be really, really strong. But of course, the gifts are this seemingly endless energy and ability to make things happen. Again, it's a strength and it's a gift. And it starts being a liability when aides sometimes find that they need to fill the perceived vacuum, right? So very often, if aides don't see a leader that they find to be a capable leader, they step in, right? And they deny the impact of that by saying, well, they were not doing a good job. Somebody needed to do something. And so, again, this is a great example of how we all have our gifts. And yet, when we amplify them and when we use them outside of context, suddenly that very thing that was our gift can become a liability. And so that's kind of where we can come in with that. Um, the great thing about the Enneagram, of course, is that understanding our type is the very beginning of our Enneagram experience, right? So many of us are here because knowing what your Enneagram type is where you start, right? It's not the prize in itself to identify your Enneagram type. And why we're actually here is now that we know our preferences, we can make choices and we can pause and we can decide whether we're going to act, feel, and think from the patterns that we have built for and we've employed for many, many years, and the patterns that worked for us to the extent where now we don't see them as patterns, we see them as how we are. So Enneagram offers us this opportunity to step out of that, zoom out, take a look, and see what is it that we can do to balance our energy and the energy of our type with some other tools that are available. And so we are going to have a look at the wings and the lines first, and then maybe then we'll stop sharing and I'll stop talking and we can hear from you. But also going to see if there are any questions. It doesn't seem like that, but if there's anything so far that's come up for you, do let me know. All right. Maybe I'm too much, my energy. I promise you can go for it. Awesome. All good. I think we'll have more questions after we look at this. So one of my favorite parts of unpacking the Enneagram type with the client is to look at how we can borrow from other types' energy and get what we need that sometimes it might not be available from the energy of our core Enneagram type. And so the concept of wings in the Enneagram refers to the fact that each type on the either side of our core type has energy that we can reach out for and use when we want it and when we need it. And in the kind of the beginning of the Enneagram, there was language like a wing and a counter wing, and it referred to a situation where maybe we use one of our wings quite a lot and we don't use the other one at all. And sometimes we would even call ourselves as I am Enneagram type 8 with wing 7. But what we know now is that from neuroscience and neuroplasticity and the actual ethos of the Enneagram, in that we have all 9 styles within ourselves, it really makes sense that we should approach both wings when we need them. And if we think about a bird, it needs 2 wings to fly, right? So what happens if a bird goes like that? We just go around in circles at best, or we just crash and burn. So we really need two of our wings. And for a type 8, 7 and 9 both provide something that is not exactly available from the energy of their type. So what I really like about 8's kind of getting to understand how the wings can help them, is to consider, well, if I connected with my seven wing, what if I could see my power as a choice rather than as a default position? Right. So very often aides feel like they have to take action because if they don't, nobody else will and nothing will happen. Well, that's kind of quite a difficult situation, right? That's a lot of weight to carry on your shoulders. But what if it was a choice? What if my dominance and my energy was a choice and I could dial in and I could dial it up? What if I just lightened up a little, right? What would happen if I added some joy to my outlook on life? So very often a default outlook of an aide who isn't aware of themselves yet is that where is the world attacking and how can I protect myself and the people that I care about? And so imagine having that outlook of that enthusiastic visionary, bringing some joy, some lightness, can be really formative for our aides. And of course, from our type 9, which interestingly, very often eights have very little nine energy, and nines have very little eight energy, whilst they're so close to one another. And that's because they believe in fundamentally different things when it comes to boundaries and control. But if the eight can, with our help and support, reach out to a nine and project just some more interpersonal warmth, if they could bring some more empathy to the conversations, and think about, what, I'm fine with conflict and confrontation, but not everybody is. How about I'm going to just lighten up a little bit and maybe consider exactly how I'm going to approach the situation. Um, Also, sometimes aides can be quite impatient in a group decision scenario. So when something needs to be socialized, they can get quite impatient and frankly a bit unpleasant. So reaching out to a type 9 can be really helpful because nines genuinely want to reach consensus. They genuinely want to hear what's happening for other person. And so again, stepping into that energy, having the power and generosity and the energy of a type 8 with the consideration for other people that the wing to a type 9 gives them, it's a really beautiful scenario. And so working with the wings is very rewarding because it is not difficult for us to reach out for those behaviors, right? So when we talk about using wings in the context of the Enneagram, we talked about it as developmental movement, right? So we develop our core type by approaching our wings. And so, of course, there's the developmental movement and there's also transformational movement. And for transformational movement is where we get our lines. All right. And we have a question here about what would I suggest a leader to do when an aide decides they're not strong enough and decides to step in their role. Right. And what suggest to an aide to do in the same scenario? This happens so often. I literally had a conversation the other day with a team where we were unpacking this very scenario where aides perceived indecision on behalf of the leader. And interestingly enough, the leader was star 9. And so there was already quite a bit of tension between the two types from many different reasons. Firstly, because there was a perception that 8 was stepping in because they didn't feel like decisions were happening fast enough. And secondly, because of really different ways of approaching conflict, right? So the 9 leader felt a bit uncomfortable with an 8 report who was quite openly stepping into that role. But they wouldn't say anything because they didn't want to cause conflict. And so that behavior kept unfolding and unfolding until other people in the team actually said, look, we can't do it anymore. These meetings are really not great for us. We're not being a productive team. The interesting bit is that both people needed to make some differences, right? So nines needed to, a nine leader needed to acknowledge that sometimes I need to make a call, even if it is a wrong call, and even if it's a call that not everybody agrees with. And an 8 individual just realize that just because they feel that things are not moving fast enough, it doesn't mean that they're not moving fast enough. And nothing happened until a 9 type leader had a frank and direct conversation with an 8 type report. So something that 8s really value is directness. And so my recommendation would always be direct, and it also would always be kind, right? So Brené Brown says kind is clear, or clear is kind. So that's definitely a good approach in working with 8s. And I kind of thought about it too late to include it in the visual, but I just love you to imagine. So just close your eyes for me and imagine this, like, one of those large marshmallows that you used to make what do Americans call it? S'more. Yes, but it's like really massive. Like it's beautiful and it's so soft and it's so cloudy and there's barbed wire around it. That's an 8. There's a marshmallow middle that is so soft and so mushy and just needs to be loved and held and taken care of. But we've wrapped this barbed wire around because you know what? The world is just isn't a good place for marshmallows, right? Somebody can turn you into a s'more like that. And so the more we get to believe that, the stronger our barbed wire becomes. And then it starts squishing our soft marshmallow, creating a lot of pain. And so, like, if you can ever see an 8 in your life and you're thinking, what are you doing? Can you just slow down a little bit? I invite you to just remember that image. And the best way to get their marshmallow is to make them feel that they can release the barbed wire, right? So the best place for an 8 to act from the generosity and connection and that vital energy that they can offer when energy genuinely flows is when they know that they're cared for. Right. So very, very, very mushy. Right. And yeah, for an 8 female, sometimes, yeah, we have different standards, right? And we want to believe that the world is changing, and sometimes it's changing back, but we are here, and so for us, the world is changing. But the words that I used to describe a male 8 leader would be assertive and decisive and action taking, and a woman would not be called like that. There will be very different words here, and this meeting is recorded, so I'm not going to say them, but you know where we're going with that, right? So yeah, there are definitely some stereotypes, but in saying that, it's just as tricky for male type 2s representatives because they're expected to be strong and not be there for other people. So we all kind of can run into situations where our energy is just not recognized, or maybe we're expected to behave differently. So best strategy is to be direct and to acknowledge that I can see a good intention behind your actions. Right. Sometimes you really need to dig deeper with 8 because sometimes their actions can look a bit inconsiderate. But they would have a good reason. It wouldn't always be a valid reason, but it will be an interesting, good reason. Yeah, better ask for forgiveness than permission. If you're lucky, you'll be asked for forgiveness. Yes. Excellent. All right. So those are the wings. And then for us to develop ourselves even further. So when we say that the wings are our pathway for development, we're saying that our lines are the pathway to transformation, right? And we use lines for transformation because now we are venturing quite a bit further from our core type. And so by doing that, we're actually getting hold of the energies that are not available to us from our core type. And for specifically for a type 8, they're also getting access to the center that's not theirs, right? So one of the lines goes to type 2, which is the feeling center, and the other line goes to type 5, which is thinking center. And so as an 8 who is strongly in the action center, these are great energies to have. And when we talk about lines, again, depending when you started working with the Enneagram, in the beginning of it all, the language used to describe lines was integration and disintegration line. And the belief was that when I'm under stress or in kind of poor health of my type, I go on the line of disintegration. And when I'm in relief, I go to line of integration. But again, with the same logic that we discussed when we talked about wings, where we know that we can gain so much goodness from being able to access all other 8 Enneagram types other than our own. Of course, it would make sense that if I can reach out for the reactive sides of a type, it makes sense that I can reach out for the good, creative, higher sides of the type, right? Otherwise, how could I be in one specific expression, but not in the other? But it is worth acknowledging that usually, if we're not intentional about it, we would move on that line of, let's call it stretch for the purpose of today. We will move there because we kind of tried everything from our type and it still doesn't work. And then we double down and it still doesn't work. And then it goes, whoo, and wishing us in that line. And so, how it could look for an 8 is something is happening. Maybe they feel like whatever they're offering isn't landing for people, whatever action they take isn't working, and they withdraw. And suddenly everybody goes like, "Ooh, what's going on? Oh, they've accepted. They've accepted what's happening." No, no, no. They haven't. They're planning their revenge. They're withdrawn so that they can get some more data. They will come back and they'll go for it. So that's kind of if we go there without being intentional. However, if our type 8 can be intentional about conserving their energy, perhaps, or really focusing on what's important, they can get to that 5 line and gain that. They can gain containment, then can gain rest because 8s don't rest very well, but 5s are really good about protecting their time. So, again, yes, I can go to type 5 and not be very pleasant to be around, or I can be reminded of the value of containment and energy preservation. And then type 2 for an 8 is just this beautiful line where they're letting that marshmallow shine a little bit more. They say you can never leave 8's house hungry. They would feed you whether you want it or not, quite often. And so that's the line to an 8. Generosity, seeing other people's talents, very often, and actually for myself, which is quite interesting because my core type is 8. My best leader was an 8, and my worst leader was a type 8. And they were absolutely the word does not exist to describe how opposite those people were in my life, but they both were type 8. And so again, how we show up in our type makes a difference. Our type really doesn't make a difference in a way whether we can or cannot live a fulfilled life and bring joy to other people. It's how we show up in our type that really makes a difference. Right. So these are our lines and using them for transformation. Any questions here, questions or comments before I give some more ideas on how we can work with our type? Have a look, what's going on? Yeah, excellent. Thank you, Sean. The wings. I wouldn't say so. There's a question: do we get the wings of integration, disintegration lines? We could have those types energy anyways showing up in us. So if we're talking about triadic styles, but we're not going to go there because I could talk for 2 hours just on that. So I wouldn't go that far. What I would say is we will talk about instincts in a few minutes. You take your instinct with you. Right, so a social 8 would move to a social 5 and to a social 2. And a self-preservation 8 would move to a self-preservation 2 and a self-preservation 5. So you would take your instincts with you, but not so much wings. Thank you. All right, so let's have a look for even more radical paths for transformation. And the reason why I say that they're not more radical, but they're just different. So when we work with our wings and with lines, we call them horizontal development because we are working within the Enneagram structure as we see it in a kind of 2D scenario, right? But there's also vertical development. And vertical development is imagining the Enneagram symbol as a cone. And the more you free yourself from the vice and fixation of your core type, the higher I go up on that cone, the more access I have to other A types. And so that's our vertical development. And vertical development is made possible by moving from vice to virtue and from fixation to the holy idea, right? So just a little bit about what the structures are about. And if you heard me yesterday, you know what? If I'm going to see you again, and I hope I'll see you when I talk about type 1, I'm going to ask you to tell me those things. So make notes because I'm coming for you. I'll be calling on the audience then. So our emotional transformation is transformation from vice to virtue. So the words vice and passion are used interchangeably in the world of the Enneagram. And it's kind of the vice holds us in its grip. And passion is our suffering, right? So it's a direct translation from Latin language, which means suffering. So thinking about as 9 passions are 9 ways of how we can suffer. And most of the Enneagram type vices are described using one of the deadly sins because that's just how it is. Again, we can go into the history of the Enneagram, and it's so fascinating. And so, for the purpose of this call, let's just focus on what it is. So, 4 and 8, the vice is lust. And again, not in the sense of how it's being used in our everyday life, not that you'd use it in your everyday life as a word, but that's ultimately the desire for excessiveness. I push for excessiveness in a variety of forms so that I don't have to come together with my feeling of vulnerability and weakness. And that excessiveness can look good. It could be exercise. I personally know an aide who exercises twice a day, every single day. Right. So again, it's virtuous lust, but it's still lust because it is a little bit excessive. Or learning, for example. Learning can be a lust too. So it doesn't always have to be those things that, like alcohol, you can go like, yeah, that's a bit excessive. But it doesn't have to be that. As long as I'm doing too much of something to avoid a feeling of vulnerability and weakness, that's me being in my passion. That's me being in my vice. And the antidote of that is innocence. So the virtue of innocence, and aides know when they experience that, right? So it might sound a bit counterintuitive, but you ask any aide, and they will remember the time of their life when they showed up so openly. Open heart, open mind, acceptance of how everybody was and how things were. And in that state, they didn't have to have any defenses. They didn't have to protect themselves from anything because they fundamentally believed that life is good. I'm good. People are good. So it's that innocence where I don't need to worry about being vulnerable because no one is coming for me. Right. So again, if you can't quite connect with that, it's likely because you're not living your life from a type 8, right? So like other people's and other types, vices and virtues just don't seem to get us as much as our own does. So it's a very good kind of marker. If you're still deciding, is it my Enneagram type? Is it not? I really recommend sitting with advice experience. If it's yours, you'll know that. So vice to virtue is that emotional transformation, and fixation to holy idea is the mental pattern. So our mental pattern supports our emotional experience, right? Because we are humans, we feel, think, and act. So I can't have deep vice and holy idea on the other hand, right? And so when I'm working with vice to virtue, fixation to holy idea, they would happen together. Even if I'm working only on one of them, it will come together because we are humans. This is how it works. And so fixation as a mental pattern is this process of rebalancing the wrongs. In my head, I'm thinking how I am going to. Whoa, you just wait and you will see. And sometimes it can be a 100% unconscious pattern. Maybe somebody cuts you off in a car. And other type would be like, oh, they just cut you off. The 8 will be, I'm gonna get to you. And you're like, what is going on? So it can really play out on this really small kind of everyday situations. It's just, I'm gonna get you. One way, how's the song goes? That must be an 8 song, right? One way or another, I'm gonna get you. Yep, that must have been an 8, now to think about it. Look, you're getting a psalm here, people. That's just possibly too much. And so it goes to fixation of vengeance to holy idea. And the holy idea ultimately is our relationship with trust in the universe, right? So we either believe that the universe has our back or we don't, right? And so the closer we are to holy idea, any type's holy idea is really another word for the basic trust in the universe, in the bigger truth, right? It could be religious for people. If they're religious, it could be, quantum physics for people if they're scientists, but ultimately we either believe it or we don't. And so the holy idea for an age, the holy truth is that, um, you know what? There is my truth, and there is Kate's truth, and there is Jin's truth, and there is James's truth, and there is Sean's truth, and they're all truths for us, right? And it's very difficult to see it from the fixated mind, right? So for us to see that there are multiple truths that are available in the universe, it's a big deal. And when we start seeing that, again, beautiful things happen because we allow ourselves to react in a way that looks more like a response than a reaction, right? So wherever we react, we reenact our patterns of feeling, thinking, and acting. And when we respond, we take a pause and we make different choices, which usually are much better choices, right? So another little piece of transformation and development. Any questions so far? So we talked about vice to virtue, and we talked about fixation to holy idea. So again, one of the central concepts of the Enneagram. How do you move from vice to virtue? With great difficulty, lots of work, lots of awareness, and it all starts with self-awareness, of course, and it's actually quite tricky for a type A, but lack of self-judgment, right? So how can I notice those things and be okay with that? How do I notice something and not take immediate action? Right? How can I see it with discomfort and not immediately do something? So yeah, it's that pause, box breathing, inhale, hold it, exhale for a bit longer than you inhaled for. Just doing that regulates our nervous system. Regulated nervous system means better choices. So I would say starting with breathing properly and being aware and no judgment. Because once we see some things, we really want to unsee them. But it's impossible. So it's a good thing. It really is. Sean.
Yeah, just on that, I come from a 6.6, but my wife is a type 8.
Congratulations.
Yes, thank you. Um, and I've worked with a number of 8s and so forth. And just on that vice to virtue, my observation of the experience and talking through the experience is that from that trigger or that moment, that inflection point to the rage is like it's there before they know it. And my experience, my wife tells me, is when that rage happens, she doesn't recall the rage. Right? It's such a primal rage that comes out that the cognitive part of her memory of that doesn't
Yeah.
exist.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's very strong.
Yeah, and it does exist there, right? So that our
Yeah,
body remembers. And this
yeah,
is where,
yeah,
again, that connection with my weakness and vulnerability also gives me connection with so many things that I've been hiding from myself, right? And so again, we cannot cognitively move from vice to virtue. It's an emotional pattern. We cannot think our way through it, and we cannot act our way through it. Yes, we need to experience it, but true experience is only possible when we connect with all three centers, right? When I have open mind, open heart, and receptive being, that what's happening right now, I'm grounded, I'm receptive, I'm breathing, I'm regulated, then there is a possibility of moving from vice to virtue. From a space of not connecting with my emotion, it is very difficult to do that. In fact, it's impossible to do that because we need all three to start. It's difficult to start. It's a bit like a flywheel. Like it's really hard to start, but once you're there, it just gets easier and easier and easier. Maybe not every day, but every month, every year, every 10 years.
Yeah, she often reflects on the journey and the development that she's gone through, that the rage isn't what it used to be.
Yeah.
That's
Thank
good.
you. Thank you for sharing that. Kate, and then Biliana.
Yeah, it's difficult not to engage despite being the host because full disclosure, I'm a type 8. Yuliya and I actually share the same subtype with this. They're the same, although there is a little bit of difference between us, of course. We're all individuals. But it's interesting to hear you talk about the rage, Sean, because I think what motivated me to change, and like everybody, it's a long road, right? We're on a road of growth and development. So not suggesting that it's, completely sorted. But I think what I found was my desire to protect people is so overwhelmingly motivating for me. It drives everything that I do, perhaps problematically at times, that I've become focused on that and the impact that that rage has on people. And so that's really been the motivating force for me to look inward. For a long time, I didn't even know my vengeance existed. And Yulia's description of the vengeance being thoughts of causing harm, it took me until I actually started slowing down. So it was actually in the process of the Enneagram journey for myself. I looked at vengeance and I thought, gosh, I would never hurt anybody. I knew I had the capacity to hurt people, but I couldn't see where it was deliberate. And it took me to slow down and watch my response and my reaction that I realized I was moving into my head. So my rage was a body response, move into my head. And then the thinking process is to inflict as much pain on the person causing me pain or distress or control or whatever, humiliation, whatever the case may be. It was a thinking, the fixation was how do I create, and it's almost like um an arrow that, like, it's precise. It's how do I inflict the most pain on the person who's trying to harm me. But it's so instantaneous, it's so quick. I didn't even know it existed. It took me a long time to slow the whole process down and realize. And then I watched myself doing it, creating this pain in my mind. And then when I realized it was happening, the shame and the guilt that I felt, it was overwhelming. And actually, it took me years of tears to process what I was doing. So even though I wasn't physically going out and hurting people, obviously I was energetically thinking about it. And of course, it comes out. We all get angry and frustrated and express it in a way. But I just thought, that might be interesting because I get a lot of feedback from people who are fearful of eights. They kind of pigeon us as this big bad person, Trump and Putin, all these sort of bad people. Just to know, of course, that we're just human, like Yulia is explaining. And when we come to realize the potential for harm, I would say, in my experience, more often than not, as that eights that I know just absolutely feel awful about that, as we all do with all of our stuff, right? With in any interaction. Anyway, enough about that. Thank you for
Beautiful.
letting me share.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing, Kate. It's just really seeing how that mental, there's a real difference between vice that works in our kind of being
Mm.
and the thoughts that happen that support that vice. Yeah. Thank you, Kate. Ileana.
I wanted to say I have a pattern too. And accessing energy of eight was life transformative for me.
Mm,
So that ability to say no
Mm.
and to mean it
Yes.
was really balancing for me.
mm,
So that eights are not kind of seen, as Kate is saying, as a problem. Of course, when I access that ability, the power to say no and mean it and feel it, I can relate to Katie saying, with that, I've got that sometimes ability to kind of think of some revengeful thoughts. And this is the moment for me to recognize, where was I vulnerable and powerless?
Mm.
mm,
And
Mm.
from that place, kind of false sense of power came in these type of thoughts. But that's the moment. And maybe just to add, my daughter is 8. So
Mm.
besides all of us to
Yeah.
needing to actually
Yeah.
needing to take a breath and pause, I learned that I need to pause with her.
mm,
And when she comes very strong, that I need to look like, what is so vulnerable in her that she's protecting so strongly,
mm.
to kind of hear in that way.
Yeah. John.
Can I also add, for those that are living with eights, don't poke the eight until they energy is all burnt out. It's not healthy,
Mm. Yeah. Thank
right?
you. It has limits, right? It might
Yeah,
look like it doesn't, but it
yeah,
has limits. And
yeah.
again, what again Biljana is describing is I'm going to be my best self so the other person can be their best self with me, right? And so thank you so much for sharing that. Um, and because eights also have this kind of belief that they can bend time and space and do things that nobody else can, I reckon we could cover instincts in 7 minutes. So let's see if that if that is true. I think we can do it. Right. So I love this slide. To me, it really represents how we learn and move with the Enneagram, because the moment you think that, wow, I've got it, I just tell me anything and I know it all, something else always comes up. We open another matryoshka doll and there we go, something else. And so instincts is that exactly something else of the Enneagram. And so for the purpose of this slide, I'm going to ask you to remove the Enneagram symbol and motivations of 9 types outside of your conscious for just a couple of minutes, and then we'll bring it back. So instincts represent our biological drives, right? So Enneagram, it's about motivation. Instincts is about biological drive. What am I paying attention to when I not even know it? So in a way, it's more primal than motivation, right? Most even single cell organisms have self-preservation in some way, shape, or form. All mammals would have all 3 of those. So self-preservation as an instinctual group is responsible for keeping us physically safe. So shelter, water, job, insurance, retirement account, taking care of people through comfort, creating comfort for them. In my handbag, as a self-preservation person, I would have wet wipes, dry wipes, bottle of water, a scarf. I'm ready. Whatever happens, I'm here. Whereas the social group is more responsible for understanding how I fit in this group. Coming from those early days when if I'm ostracized from a tribe, I'm dead because nobody could survive on their own. But the social instinct is kind of navigating that group. Where am I in this group? Who's the leader? How am I ranking? What do I need to be doing to rank better? And so social instinct doesn't mean I like being with people. It could mean social anxiety too. It just means that it's an item in my life that I consistently pay attention to. And then there's a sexual instinct or a one-on-one instinct. And that instinct is about kind of spark, passion, connection. It's yes, it can be connection to other person and maybe merging with their agenda or getting them to merge with yours, but it's more about that insatiable need to experience life to its fullest, right? So it's kind of driving us to do things, and usually when we now bring the Enneagram back, that instinctual group makes our type seem a little bit more intense than the other ones. So all of us have all three within ourselves, but we usually have one instinct that leads us. We're not leading our instinct, it leads us, unless we're really, really conscious of that. So now we're gonna wheel back the Enneagram symbol. Luckily it's a circle, so it, wheels nicely. And so we now have really 27 subtypes because we have 9 motivations and 3 instincts. And so within type 8 specifically, here are the words that describe how different subtypes of type 8 can show up. And those descriptions were done by Claudia Naranjo and then further developed by Beatrice Chestnut. So the self-preservation 8, the word here is satisfaction. So think about the 8 and that energy and ability and capacity. And I know what I need. And I also know what people around me need. And so what I'm going to do, I'm going to go and get it. So I'm going to satisfy my needs and the needs of people dear and near to me. And I'd rather you not stand on my way when I'm about to do that. And if you do, well, we'll have conversations. So that's about, I'm aware of my needs. I'm going to go and get it. So it's a really pragmatic 8 that is just, there is this kind of need of bringing it closer to me, like a squirrel, and bring my nuts to me. They're here. And then the social subtype is solidarity. So social subtype, because I'm navigating the room, I feel acute responsibility for other people too, right? So Kate shared that, right? She said, I protect people. Like this is my orientation is to protect others. That's because my energy of an 8 and what's happening and who could be attacking and who needs protection shows up as this group needs protection and only I can do that. Any social aid would have an example in their life when they put their heart on the line for people and they were like, oh, we never asked you to do that. Like, why did you even do that? So if anybody had this experience, welcome to a social aid. And then we have a one-on-one aid or a sexual aid, and the word here is possession. And that's because they want that merging with another person. But unlike a 9 who is an SX, who is happy to merge with other person's agenda, 8 SXs often want you to merge with my agenda. And so that energy of an 8 is a little bit more possessive, right? So if I have the connection, I'll have it all. If I like something, I'll like all of it. So there's that excessiveness of an 8. It can show up in kind of more vibrant way. Often they get the feedback, whoa, you're a lot. But then again, most 8s do get feedback like that. And so these are just the different subtypes that show how 8s can show up. In saying that, very often counter type specifically, the type that doesn't look like their type, can be mistyped. 8s rarely get mistyped because they just know. They have experience. I know I shouldn't say it, but here we go. They know how they get in their way. And usually it's because of that vice of lust getting me to just be driving something that necessarily might not be great for me. So these were the instincts. I'm going to stop sharing and check the time. 7 minutes. There we go.
Impressive.
We made it. So again, really important to understand the subtypes in the Enneagram world. And if you're feeling, I really resonate with most of the type characteristics, but not fully, something is off. It very often might mean that you have an instinct that makes you show up not like your type. So really worth exploring. Beautiful. Okay,
Have any
questions,
more questions?
reflections.
Yes, questions.
Of course, my dog walks in because why not? He knows we're on top of the hour. I can now have him. What a good dog.
Any questions? Anyone want to pose anything to Yuliya? Oh, Claire. Yes, go ahead.
Claire.
So I have a question about I like the developmental, the side of the wings, and
Mhm.
human nature is often that we're attracted to something that we don't have in ourselves, and then often in relationship we're attracted to it, and then we start to resent it when
Mhm.
after a while. And so, say with an 8, this is sort of kind of personal sort of experience, wanting that sort of joy and optimism and that enthusiasm in a relationship, and then resenting it because it was too much, or for them it was uncomfortable for some reason. I sit at 7.
Mhm.
So how would you work with that to sort of still encourage the wing of the 7, but without, forcing it onto somebody?
Yeah, that's a great question. And also, I would think twice before I force anything on
No,
an
sorry,
eight.
not force is probably, yeah, not force is
Yeah,
not the
yeah.
right
No,
word,
no, I know what you mean.
but
But what I mean is that
sorry.
if
So
an
from a
eight,
7's point of view, it
yeah.
felt like my life force was being quashed.
Mm,
So that's my stuff to deal with because I'm feeling completely like I can't. I mean, that's my passion, so I obviously need to dial that back. But yeah, how?
yeah, that's a great question. And the the change and the development is something that we cannot when I said I like the word force is because that's what we want it so badly for other person to like, how can you not see how you're getting in your way? Like, I want you to see that. So like if we can, like, like Star Wars, may the force be with you, just give them a glimpse of what we see, right? So it's the kind of the best intention energy that we have. But until an individual decides that they are ready or they need change, nothing is going to happen. So we know that behavior change is hard. Long-term behavior change is even harder. And so for us to embark on that and to have commitment to that, commitment to doing something that's different, commitment to building new neural pathways that we don't have, commitment to disbanding our beliefs that we've held our entire life, we need to have a really compelling reason for that. And that reason is usually either generated away from pain or towards gain. And an individual just needs to make that decision. Unless we as a person decide that we want to change. I can read, I can learn, I can recite developmental strategies, but if I'm not going to try them on myself, nothing will happen. And so it's really is a tricky situation because very often from outside we can see exactly how this person's life can be better, right? We can't read from inside the can. We can't see the picture from the frame space. And yeah, it's tricky, and it's that vulnerability, right? So for an 8, if I'm vulnerable enough to see how what I'm doing isn't serving me, I will change. Like, that's a good thing about 8s, is that when they see the compelling reason to do something differently, they will, right? And I think Kate shared that with us. But unless they feel it, unless they connect with their vulnerability enough to notice it, to allow themselves to consider that maybe I did something wrong and maybe I did it for a long, long time. There's a lot of regret and sadness that comes with that. And not every 8 is willing to sit with regret and sadness. It's easier to blame
Yeah.
than to regret. And so very often, and something that I certainly experienced, and where I think the Enneagram made the biggest difference for me and understanding myself, was wherever something happened that really threatened my self view of myself as being a person who is strong and in control, and I immediately would do something and I would feel so guilty. But guilt is not something I want to feel because it can make me vulnerable. So blame is so much easier because it's also outside reference. But the tricky part was that guilt blame happened so quickly that I never even noticed the guilt. Right. So Sean talks about why his wife not noticing the rage. I literally all I had was event blame. This is happening to me because that. But actually, when I slowed down enough, and it sounds like, well, what do you mean slow down? Like it's happening for you right now. Like what is happening? But I genuinely didn't see that. And so for me, the biggest motivation to work with the Enneagram was noticing that guilt blame and how much of my guilt was valid and how much of my blame was my attempt to escape that. And when I saw that for myself, no one would tell me, and people told me, I just didn't hear them, you know, like until I myself noticed that guilt, blame, guilt, blame. Now I can slow down. Okay, guilt, blame, and then just guilt. And then, well, how about I stop doing things I should feel guilty about? Oh, that works. Whoa, that option was available to me at all times. Crazy. So that's kind of how, and I'm really describing a timeline of maybe, well, it hasn't finished. I still do those things, but at least I can laugh about it and I can notice them. But it takes ages to arrive there, right?
Yeah, that was really helpful. I mean, and also myself relaxing my patterns, obviously, because
Mm.
I'm noticing my own. Um, but that was really helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Claire. It's
You
a
know, it's
great
really
thing.
interesting to listen to you, Claire, talk about your situation and Yulia also reflect on your experience as I am thinking about my own that I shared earlier. And the commonality there, if you haven't already noticed, is speed. So remember too that the eights are operating at such speed, and I would say that's feedback that I get constantly is the speed at which you work, the speed at which you talk, the speed at which you walk, the speed at which you do everything. It's a constant feedback, and I would say that that's part of the addiction. It's part of the intensity of like go faster, go fast. In fact, speeding, driving, like
Oh my
I have
gosh.
to put my cruise
People don't
control.
drive with me.
Yeah,
Like my work colleagues wouldn't drive with me, literally. They'd say, no, thanks, I'll take an Uber.
I'll take it over. I have to put my cruise control on and I have to relinquish
Personal
control.
growth case right there.
Right, because I've had so many speeding tickets and I'm not even conscious. My foot just goes down and so it's interesting to hear you talk about it, Yuli. You know, it's the speed, the reacting time. And so it does take time for, dare I say, poor old apes to just realize they need space and time and you know, you're right, Sean, the Fast and the Furious is a great explanation. Have we got any more questions? I'm conscious of time. We're a little over. We've got another session coming up. You're good, Sean, or is that a hand wave to question? Okay, cool. Yulia, is there anything else you'd like to share before we finish up?
Yeah, just that I'm really excited about bringing the Q9 certification to our part of the world. I do lots of training for West Coast America and Europe and uh, begging. I was begging Integrative to do one live one in Melbourne, and we are running that. And there's also an online training in September that is good for Australia and New Zealand times. So I'm sharing the link here. As part of me kind of really wanting to get the cohort together, I am also going to add from myself a debrief session that's not part of the course. So if you are a coach or would like to know more, please do come in. And we also have a group of enthusiasts that meets every 6 weeks. And we've been meeting for 2 years now. And yeah, you're all welcome to join. It's just something we do 5 p.m. one of Thursdays. Ali comes in, Jin was there. So yeah, you're all welcome. Sasha is there also at 7 a.m. or 6 a.m. Irish time. So you're really welcome. We're going to update our events page once the marathon is finished with that link. So you can join us. Our next meeting is sometime in June. So
Yes, it's coming up soon. So if you're wanting to be part of that, just get in touch. You can email me at events@enneagram.aanz.org.au. But we are hoping to get our events finder up and running very soon. We've had a lot of people working in the back end with the technology, so we're really grateful for your patience as we just get these things up and running. But it should be running soon, hopefully next week. Along with the recordings too, we've had a few questions about recordings. We would just want to reiterate that as members, you will be getting access to the recordings. You have to just be patient with us as we get that up and running, but promise that it is coming. We're working on it. I've had messages tonight as we speak, so it is happening, and we'll get that to you. I want to just put the links out there for our social media. Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. Your support in following us, sharing, liking makes all the difference. I can't tell you how much it helps us. And, in order for us to grow, in order for us to continue to share this amazing content, amazing speakers, and to bring more people, we want to also create more opportunity for us to get together. The more of that support that we can get makes a huge difference. So I know not everyone's on social media, but please share it around. A quick promo for the week ahead. So just after this session, in about 50 to 49 minutes, at 7 o'clock, we've got Gail Hardy and Malcolm Lazenby going to share Enneagram in the AI world. So that is going to be fascinating. I can't wait to watch that. So that's 7 o'clock tonight, of course, 9 o'clock New Zealand time, and whatever time it is, Sasha, in Ireland, I don't know. I'm sure you've got a link to work it out. Tomorrow we've got an 8 a.m. start with amazing Carl Heavenstraight, who is going to be sharing about building resilience with the Enneagram. And don't we need that, especially in this world and all of the challenges that we've got ahead of us. At lunchtime tomorrow, 12 p.m., 2 p.m. New Zealand time, we've got Serena sharing Exploring Type 6. So, Sean, I know you're going to be turning up if you're there, or he's already popped off, but he'll be there for sure, no doubt. And then we've also got tomorrow night Exploring Type 7 with Marg Loftus. So the festival continues. There's more there and there's more coming. We can't wait to see you all there again and looking forward to the sharings ahead. So thanks again, everyone, for attending. See you soon.
thank you.
Guys, bye.